Las Vegas. It's more than just a city. It's a feeling. It's that feeling of excitement when you spot the lights of the strip out the airplane window. It's that feeling of awe as you stroll down the boulevard, taking in the sights and sounds. And it's that feeling of satisfaction, knowing that you're in the greatest city in the world. Over 42 million people from around the world share that feeling every year, and I'm one of them. Taking you to the world-famous Vegas Strip and beyond, my name is Jeff, and this is Jeff Does Vegas. I make absolutely no secrets about the fact that I love food. In fact, as frequent listeners to the podcast know, anytime I get the opportunity to get down to Vegas and put together a trip report episode, my favorite part of that trip and of those episodes is being able to share some of the great meals and restaurants that I've enjoyed on my trip. So, when I had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with a Las Vegas-based chef who took her love for cooking and turned that passion into something bigger, I absolutely jumped at the chance. My guest for this episode of the podcast is Chef Alicia Shevetone. Chef Alicia is a pop-up chef who hosts events all over the city. She's authored 2 cookbooks with 2 new ones on the way. She's a regular on the morning news shows all over Las Vegas, and she hosts her own cooking show online. She's also the founder of something called Dink Cuisine, a unique cooking concept for a very specific demographic. Chef Alicia and I chatted about what got her into cooking initially, what inspired her to follow her passion and turn it into a career, as well as the creative process that she follows when she's creating new recipes. Please enjoy my conversation with Chef Alicia Shevetone.
So I first moved to Vegas in 2001 with my husband right after we got married. I got married back in the Bay Area, so I'm a Silicon Valley kid, born and raised in San Jose. And that's where I met my husband. When we first moved out here, we were both working for tech companies at the time. After I graduated from law school. I decided not to become an attorney and just kind of go into high-tech sales. He was working for a high-tech company. September 11th happened, and we both lost our jobs. So we had to move back to the Bay Area. There wasn't a lot of, Zoom meetings and stuff at the time. So you kind of pretty much had to be, where your company was based. So we moved back and, really at that point, kind of kept up our both of our careers. My husband is a former musician. He's also an artist. If you see the Sahara painting right behind me, this is something that he did. He actually painted a beautiful painting of the Hard Rock logo, which is where we got engaged back in '99. So, our history in this town dates back quite a ways, but we didn't get a chance to move back to Las Vegas until 2019. Which is when all my Dink Cuisine really started rolling, which has been great ever since. So, yeah.
So what was it that brought you back to Las Vegas? Was it just you wanted kind of out of that tech industry and you were saying, you know what, I really want to turn this passion that I have into something big?
Yeah, this is our town. I mean, it's just because we didn't live here, even when we weren't living here, we were coming to Vegas probably about every 4 to 6 weeks. So we just sort of figured, it's time to move back. We wanted a house. We were living in the Marina District in San Diego for 10 years, which was awesome. It's always sad to leave a town like San Diego. But, when you only have 1,100 square feet and your dues are $900 a month, you start to think about, okay, what's our retirement plan going to look like? Want to build a house that's ours, want to have room for a dog, sort of thing. So it just made a lot of sense for us to come back here. Tech is still very much a big part of our lives. My husband and I both have our day jobs still, been able to successfully navigate both. I'm a CEO of a consulting firm that's based back in Silicon Valley. He works for a company in the utilities industry, and for now it's working for us because of the flexibility of what we do, and we make it ours. It's one of the benefits of not working for a restaurant for me is because I've got the flexibility to do events and projects and entrepreneurial endeavors, outside of my day to day.
So let's talk about cooking because, again, this is something that I love. I mean, clearly, I love to eat. Who doesn't? Um, how did you get into cooking? I mean, how did you learn to cook? Is it just you always enjoyed spending time in the kitchen and messing around with recipes and trying stuff out? I mean, what really got you into it?
Yeah, I'll tell you so my mom is just a fabulous cook. She was doing stuff in the 70s and the 80s, unlike anybody else. I mean, she was exploring with, Indian cuisine and, Asian cuisine and different types of things. So I had a pretty sophisticated palate very early on because of her. My mom is Northern Italian, so I'm kind of split right down the middle. My father was French, my mom's Italian. And so sort of like, a European vibe growing up, really had a good appreciation for food, was exposed to a lot of things. My mom took me on a lot of trips, when I was growing up. And I got to experience a lot of different cultures and cuisines, which really inspired my interest in cooking myself and learning the craft. It's very, very difficult, when you're just starting out, you gotta, buy spices, and you gotta, figure out, like, you're buying a bunch of cookbooks. You see all the books behind me are all cookbooks that I've collected over the years, and I've got stacks. You just sort of become just a constant student in the craft. And so I started cooking, particularly when I got married back in 2000. It was really a time for me to kind of, nest and, do some really fun things. And what really inspired Dink Cuisine for me, though, is because I noticed that I was wasting a lot of food. I was overeating. And a lot of that is because standard recipes are written for anywhere from 4 to 8 servings. And my husband and I are childless by choice, didn't want to do the kid thing. And we also like to eat out a lot and be out at night. And so in general, I think a lot of people are sort of lulled into this expectation that they should be meal planning, right? That's the big thing. Like, if you're going to be fit and you're going to be healthy, then you're going to plan your meals. That works for some people, but if you have a dynamic life, here in Las Vegas, the world's our oyster. We could be anywhere tonight. I have no idea what's going on tonight. I'm not going to meal plan because that food ends up in the trash. So that's really how Dink Cuisine got started, is because I started writing recipes for two. Then I decided to self-publish my first cookbook, which is Italian Cookbook for Two. And then my following took off on social media at that point, because there were plenty of people just like us who have kids, but in our demographic, their kids have moved on, so they're empty nesters. Or there are single people taking care of an aging parent, or, roommates, any number of different, college kids just kind of starting out. They don't want to cook, you know, really complicated recipes for 8 people.
Right,
So
right.
it kind of all started from there, but it primarily started because I love to cook, but I was not going to cook for an army. I just wanted to cook for me and my husband.
You mentioned growing up with a French dad and an Italian mom, and I have friends who are Italian, and I've had dinner at their homes. And speaking of cooking for an army, I mean, was that kind of your upbringing? I mean, again, I can't go to an Italian friend's house without their mom saying, "You look hungry. Here, have something," and they're pulling stuff out of the fridge. Was that your experience at all as a kid?
No, no, that's not how my family was, and I don't know if it's different in Northern Italy. Maybe that sort of dynamic was just a little bit different. But my mom was very much like, and it's so common now to kind of the whole a la minute. You're cooking fresh. You're thinking about what's in season. It's certainly in vogue now, but my mom was doing that back in the 80s, when I was growing up, and she cooked very deliberately, very specific meals for who was coming, and not, because she was expecting 20 people to roll in the house. That just wasn't the type of house that we had. So yeah, no, that wasn't my Italian experience, but I know it's very common. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the creative process that you follow when you are developing a new dish or a new recipe.
Yeah, I tell you, thank God for the internet. And thank God for Food Network and just restaurants. I seek my inspiration in so many different ways, and I'm the type of chef that wakes up in the middle of the night thinking of something, and then the next day I have to do it. It's like this compelling process. My thing yesterday that I came up with was sort of a miniature chicken parmesan on crostini, which is a little toasted baguette. So I wanted to do, because I do a lot of appetizer events. So I'm always trying to shrink down, traditional meals into small format. So for me, I'll take a look at, okay, so how does Ina Garten do, a particular recipe? Or if it's Italian, I'll go to Giada and I'll think, okay, what is she doing? I'll look at certain recipes and then I'll pick apart things that I don't like. And of course I have to shrink it down, because again, they're normally for like 8 people. So it's a process of sort of synthesizing recipes from different people, taking what I like. And that's what everybody does. Everybody's inspired by someone else. In cooking, just like in anything else, just like in music, there are very few original ideas. You never want to take credit or be overly boastful about something. But at the same time, the other day, I love mashups. So I'm always kind of taking different recipes and mashing them together. The other day I did one that was a combination of chilaquiles, which is a popular Mexican brunch dish almost, and then enchiladas suiza. So I called it suizaquiles. And technically that's never been done because Google says so. So that's the original idea. But I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, it's, the whole creative process is just, you're out to eat, you think of something, you're watching your favorite cooking show, you're reading a cookbook, and, you think, my God, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? And I actually have to do it. It's just, sort of how I come up with my crazy recipes, and then I put them online, and then everybody goes, oh God, what does she do now?
and so who gets to be your guinea pig or your tester? Is it your husband that you try this stuff on?
Yes. Yeah. And me. Yeah. And my mom. So yesterday I came up with a new dessert, and my mom was here. And so she got to taste it and she was super happy. And then I sent her home with a bunch of chicken parmesan.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I got to come over and get sent home with a bunch of chicken parmesan.
There you go.
Have you ever had any epic failures when you've been trying to put something together? You put something together and you tried and you're like, no. And I mean, how do you recover from that? Do you just kind of say, okay, I'm going to play around with this a little bit or mess around? Or do you just toss it and say, forget it, I'm just moving on to something else?
Yeah. I mean, all the time. I mean, you when you're trying to develop something, particularly mashups, when you're taking 2 different types of genres of food and you're mashing them together, it takes practice, and sometimes it doesn't always work. Like I did a couple of years ago, I did a mac and cheese that I thought was going to be phenomenal, and it was inspired by my love for sour cream and onion potato chips. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do a sour cream and onion mac and cheese. So I'm going to do like a bechamel sauce. And I'm going to put different types of onions in it. So I had scallions, I think I had leeks, and a couple of different things to sort of, inspire the onion flavor in the mac and cheese. And then I decided to top it with crumbled up sour cream and onion potato chips, and then bake it, right, to have the crispy topping.
This all sounds amazing to me.
It was, I actually, that was one that I didn't pick up and try again, because I was so disappointed that when it came out and my husband and I tasted it, we were like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, this is really, really bad. And I don't know what wrong. It was one of those things where I was like so scarred by that I didn't pick it up. So thanks for reminding me. Actually, I probably should pick it up and try it again, because it does sound like a good idea. Right. But
I was going to say, I'm sorry, I've brought up past trauma from the sour cream and onion mac and cheese. That does sound really good though. I mean, and it sounds like it's kind of always kind of cracked me up a little bit, because my wife and I have played around with recipes and things like that. And she's the baker and the recipe follower, or the recipe sort of maker upper of the two of us. I think I just made up a phrase. Whereas I tend to like stick more to, here's the recipe, I need a list and a checklist. That's sort of my analytical brain. Yeah. And every once in a while, we throw something together and it's like, this on its own is great, and this on its own is great, but these 2 things together, no, just toss it, forget about it. That's horrible.
Well, and I kind of, my husband gets really mad because I am also always experimenting with burgers, and I love just like a really juicy burger. And then sometimes I'll put like too much dairy in it or something. And then he's like, yeah, I can't grill these. They fall apart. And it's like, why, just give me a regular, like season it and just let me grill it, and it's like, I'm always trying to so yeah, I mean, you constantly are trying to innovate and do exciting things, but yeah, it doesn't always work out that way, Jeff.
No, it really doesn't. Are you one of the people that kind of tries to incorporate new food trends into what you're working on? I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like there's always something around the corner. I mean, one month it's avocados, and then all of a sudden it's kale, and then it's something else random. It's rutabagas. I don't know where I pulled rutabagas out of, but it just came to me in the brain. All of a sudden it's something like that. Are you one of those people that's like, you know what? Yeah, I am going to play around with that and see what I can do with it?
Yeah, I have. So I'm doing writing my next cookbook with Tiffany, which we've talked about before. And, a lot of the central themes of that are reboots of recipes that we loved as a kid or that were popular, in the 80s in particular. And I have never had rice-a-roni in my life, but I decided to make a healthier version of rice-a-roni inspired by rice-a-roni with cauliflower, and I call it my caulifroni. So cauliflower is, plus one of my cookbooks is actually a ketogenic vegetarian cookbook. So I do a lot of things with vegetables. And you take a look at social media. I mean, I'm addicted to reels on Instagram. I mean, I think everybody is. Everybody loves TikTok. Right now the big thing is these chopped Italian hoagies. Have you heard of those?
I have not actually, but I'm going to go look for them.
Yeah, so you take like all the things that you would get in an Italian sub, basically, and you chop up all the ingredients. And it probably was one of the best sandwiches I've ever made. And so I'm actually putting it on the menu for one of my pop-ups on June 3rd at Vegas Valley Winery, where I've had a culinary residency there for almost 2 years now. And so that's going to be actually on the menu just in slider form. So it's just, yeah, that's a TikTok one that I couldn't ignore. And it's because it's really good. Really, really good.
It's funny that you mentioned cauliflower, because I think the most exotic I've gotten with cauliflower is mixing it in with my mashed potatoes to cut the calories. And what's interesting is we have a friend who hates cauliflower, but we've snuck it into the mashed potatoes a couple of times on her, and she's never noticed.
Well, and there's people who are, I don't know, gluten-free, and it's got different types of sensitivities, allergies, or whatever. I really like, there's a tabbouleh that I do that has cauliflower instead of bulgur. And that's a really, really good one because, you're chopping it up super, super small. You rice it, right? It's basically like whole rice. Just put it in a food processor and chop it up super, super tiny. But you put it in with cucumber and, a nice vinaigrette, something super bright, bunch of herbs. And it's like, you don't taste it. It's cauliflower. It's just,
doesn't really have
like
a taste.
Yeah.
Cauliflower taste. If somebody had to describe the taste of cauliflower, it'd be white broccoli. I don't know.
Yeah. People cook the hell out of it, and then it smells like smells up the house. But like if you were to have it raw, like it's a great canvas.
Yeah, exactly. Have there been any food trends that you've kind of looked at it and went, no, I'm not even gonna attempt this because I think it's silly?
Well, not really. It's a type of thing where I think I'll try just about anything. And I don't know what that is. I really, and I've tried to be introspective about something like this. There are culinary professionals, culinary educated, going to culinary school is an entirely different thing. If you go to pastry school, if you go to culinary school, you develop a mindset that is pristine. There's a pedigree there. It's like going to Ivy League school. But I think what that does for many chefs is it removes them from the day-to-day of us, right? The people that cook at home. And that's why I always say, because I'm more Rachel Ray than I am Giada, right? If you were to take my two idols, I'm sort of the combination of both of them. Giada is very, went to culinary school in France. She's done a lot of stuff, and she's got a lot of great credentials to back up what she's done. But I think the reason why I'm not afraid, and there's not trends that I just have revulsion towards is because I don't necessarily think that I'm better than anything. I don't have that ego, or at least I try not to, that says, God, what are they doing? So because people are probably looking at my stuff going like, what is she doing? Like, it's crazy. So
I think it is kind of important to mention. I mean, as you say, you're not quote unquote professionally culinary trained. You're not you didn't go to school or any of that. You are 100% self-trained and self-taught,
yes.
which I think is awesome.
Thank you.
That's got to be a little bit nerve-wracking and a little intimidating though at times. Is it?
It is. When I first started, I would say yes, but it's only because I would hear things, from people, and they would say, well, you're calling yourself a chef, and people in this town in particular, might take offense to that. It's like, you're not really a chef, you're more of a cook or whatever. And it's like, I'm not calling myself a chef. Other people are calling me a chef, so, and I'm, a cookbook author. That's why I kind of say, I'm television personality. I've got, my own show. I'm also, an in-studio chef, here in Las Vegas. But I think it's, you raise an interesting point that it depends on where you come from and what you like. I'm not trying to be anything I'm not. I'm not trying to be everything for everybody. I like to stay in my lane, but I like to constantly push the boundaries, and still have been presented with some amazing opportunities here in this town, which I am forever grateful, always will be for. But yeah, there's a line in the sand. You're on one side or the other, and it's palpable at times, but it doesn't bother me.
For me personally, I don't care who's cooking the food. If it's good and it's showing up on my plate and it tastes wonderful, I really don't care who's cooking it.
And there's plenty of room and for all of us. There's celebrity chefs that are coming into this town. They continue to open restaurants. There's people off strip who are, have incredible concepts. We've got Chinatown. We've got so many different parts of the city that make us great. And there's room for everybody. There's private chefs that are making just killer livings, just doing things in Airbnbs. I mean, it's a great way to make a living and be passionate about what you do.
You've talked about Dink Cuisine a couple of times, and you've brought that up and you've mentioned it. There are probably people that are not familiar. I'm 100% familiar with the term because I am one. My wife and I are Dinks, and when you bring that up, there's people that are probably like, "What the hell are they talking about? What are you talking about?" So maybe a brief explanation of the term Dink would be helpful.
Yeah. So Dink is an acronym for dual income, no kids. So that was kind of like when I was thinking about, well, if I'm going to be specializing in recipes for two, like what do I call that? That's going to be unique and interesting. And yeah, so my husband and I are Dinks, and you guys are Dinks.
We are. We are.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, really that whole idea, we talked a little bit about where the idea of Dink Cuisine came from originally. And it really was, as you say, it was just a case of, I don't want to waste food. I don't want to be buying for a bunch of stuff, and adapting those recipes for, as you say, because it's anytime you open up a cookbook, it's always for a family of 4, a family of 6 or whatever. And let's face it, for some of us, talking about me here, math is hard.
I didn't want to do fractions anymore. I mean, honestly, like how do you, what's 1/4 of a quarter teaspoon of salt? I mean, I was like, okay, an 1/8 of a teaspoon, I guess, but it's just not, it just, at a certain point, the industry has to bend for us, right? I've been bending for the industry and the way recipes are written, I'm going to be 52 next month, so for quite some time, so what really I'm trying to do is to kind of be a voice for households that are like mine. And interestingly enough, if you look at the census, I think it was either 2021, maybe 2020, but the average household in America is 2.53 people. So if anything, there are households that are much closer to ours, yours and mine, than the, other side. that have huge houses and people that are, cooking for armies and stuff. So I think it's about time that, we recognize what the dynamics are, the demographics. And that's, I know you're in Canada, but, I'm talking about here in the United States. And that's a growing trend, and the sizes are only getting smaller. So if anything, we're not going the other way. We're not in the middle of baby boom or anything like that. Households are getting smaller. So it's time to start thinking a little bit more mindfully about what we're cooking. I always say, don't cook aspirationally. I think that's what gets people in trouble when they have good hearts. They've got their head in the right place. They're trying to be mindful about what they're eating, and they're pre-cooking and they're trying to do the meal planning thing, but it ends up in the trash. So that's why I think that sort of just-in-time mindset, as long as you have, and there are food insecurity issues, certainly. I know, ingredients are expensive, right? Food is expensive. But to the extent that you can, be mindful about, what you're cooking, and don't overextend yourself just thinking like, what I really hope to do this week is do this, and then not do it. And then you're wasting food. So you're wasting money anyway. So yeah.
The shift in demographics is an interesting point to make because, as you say, I think it's people are having less kids, and they're also, I think, having kids later in life.
Sure.
I don't know too many people. I work with in my quote unquote real job. I have a lot of friends that are on the younger side of things that are in their early 20s and mid 20s, and even just into their late 20s, early 30s, and hardly any of them have kids, and most of them are in some sort of committed relationship, but maybe not necessarily married, but long-term dating or whatever. So I think, what you've put together is a kind of just seems to be the right evolution, the right shift for where cooking and where everything is going in that direction.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it is true. When you take a look at the next generation, I mean, Generation Z, and there's so much data on this. It's like, they don't want to buy cars. They don't want to buy houses. They don't want to settle down. They don't want to have kids. It's like, they're out there doing stuff. And it's like, it's not for everybody. And I think though that if we're fooling ourselves, and we keep sort of the patterns, especially Gen X, I'm profoundly Gen X, a lot of it is very much like, oh no, we're expecting people to come over, or we're doing this, we're doing that, we're having parties at the house. A lot of people still do that, but a lot of people do have very dynamic lives, and especially coming out of the pandemic, this is what people want to be doing. They don't want to be tied down at the house. They want to be out. If they're having fun with their friends, they want to go out for drinks, or there was a huge mocktail movement. I mean, it isn't, not necessarily involving alcohol, but I do think though that the dynamics that we're talking about are true. You can't ignore them. And somebody needs to be actually, speaking for that generation too, that it isn't always about, cooking pies and huge casseroles,
I feel like to a certain degree, I feel like those days are gone. And I feel like even the days of the big house parties and the big entertaining, even prior to COVID, when we couldn't do that stuff, it felt like that stuff was always kind of shifting away. My wife and I used to joke when we would watch the, realtor house hunter shows or whatever. And you'd see these people that would be going in and they'd be saying, oh, we want a big house with room to entertain. And we used to laugh and say, if that was us on that show, we'd be like, no, we want a house with a 16-foot fence and an 8-foot moat. Can you find us one of those? Like, so it feels like that's kind of gone away. And what you've put together is a little more right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. No, very much so. I can't remember the last house party I went to. My friends don't do that. We like to go out, It's like you finally get through your work week, or if I don't have an event, and people come to Vegas from all over, right? I mean, we have so many friends in Arizona, and we've got friends that are coming out, the next couple of weeks. And it's like, I got 2 events when they're here. So, I'm going to have to kind of choose my time with them very, very carefully. But that's not the time to, be putting out a whole bunch of trays on my counter here at the house. It's like, we want to be out. We want to be out and having fun. So,
well, and especially where you are too. I mean, you're in a city with literally thousands of places that you can go out to. The last place anybody wants to go is to somebody's house.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, if we were, somehow arrogant about that, it's like, well, why wouldn't people want to come here, so I could cook for them or like, be with our dog? It's like, no, we know our friends very, very well. They want to be on the strip. They want to be out. So, which is just fine for us because, it was just on the strip yesterday. I absolutely loved it.
You mentioned you've got a ton of stuff on the go and lots of different projects. You have put out a couple of cookbooks previously. Tell me a little bit about those cookbooks.
Yeah, so first one was Italian Cookbook for Two that came out in the spring of 2021. Very quickly followed up by Vegetarian Ketogenic Cookbook for Beginners, which was 75 recipes that are low carb and vegetarian, which was a phenomenal project that I was approached with by a publisher. My next cookbook is available for pre-sale now. It's called Food with Spirit, and that's 50 alcohol-infused recipes. That's with Histria, which is a local publisher here in Las Vegas. And that's actually going to ship on September 26th. And now I'm writing a cookbook with my friend, the pop star Tiffany, which is going to be really exciting. So yeah, we're calling it Pop-Up Life. She's a pop princess and I'm a pop-up chef. So Pop-Up Life.
Very cool. I want to get to Tiffany in a second because I think in our original email and our original contact, I professed my love for her.
Yes.
But I want to talk about the food with spirit and the alcohol infused recipes. First of all, I mean, that's a very cool concept and something that I don't think I've really seen anywhere before. What are some of your favorite recipes out of that book?
Oh my goodness. I have a salmon pinwheels that I do where I infuse the cream cheese with vodka, and it's a really cool brunch dish. So you very thinly slice cucumber and then you lay out smoked salmon or lox on top of that. And you almost treat it like you would a bagel, but very thinly shaved onions. I use red onions, capers, put a little bit of fresh dill, and then you roll it up almost as if you would sushi, and then you slice it. And the cream cheese that's in the roll is infused with vodka, and it's very subtle. It's not like you taste any of these recipes you're like, oh my god, it's meant to be boozy. Not that much at all. I do a really fun sheet pan, almost like a fajitas, with portobello mushrooms, peppers, onions, and then so you bake them on a sheet pan in the oven, roast at very, very high temperature. And then when you pull it out of the oven, you pour mezcal on the sheet pan. So it has a really smoky vibe, which is cool. So, mezcal is like almost like a smoky tequila, right? But the alcohol burns off because it hits the hot sheet pan and it makes a really dynamic presentation. Everyone's like, wow, super, super fun. So you serve that with blistered tortillas. It's great. But I do other things like chicken marsala. I turn chicken marsala into chicken meatballs with a really luscious marsala sauce. It's in a bunch of mushrooms. It's absolutely delicious. So there's a lot of stuff. I do one of my desserts is my cannoli tiramisu. So I use Luxardo liqueur, which is like a cherry liqueur. And so I dip the lady fingers in the cherry liqueur instead of, what traditional like a tiramisu you would dip them in espresso. So that's really, really good. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there, and none of it's really hard. Some of it takes a while. I've got a bouillabaisse that takes a few steps and it takes a couple hours to put together, but it's not like it's difficult. So there's some great stuff in there.
I'm going to have to go on a hunt for a towel and a mop later because I'm sitting here drooling. I'm like, hi. Glad I put my keyboard aside, or else I'd be able to order a new one here. Because man, the salmon was the one that I'm a big salmon fanatic, and that was the one that really got me as you're describing it, and I can taste it as you're describing it. That's outstanding. You've also released distilled spices,
yes,
which is kind of a cool idea. Again, another one that I don't think I've ever really seen or heard of.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, distilled is going to be great. So we're still in some negotiations now, but certainly by the end of spring we hope to officially launch. I'm creating my website, distilledspices.com. I've already got my Instagram up, Distilled Spices. And that's great. I mean, I chose 7 blends. I'm working with a local company here called Dress the Drink, and they're my manufacturer. They have a ton of experience. They're expanding like crazy. They also do a lot of other things like syrups and garnishes for drinks. So if you go to places like Golden Tiki, which is our tiki bar here, the one that we're primarily known for, they do, a lot of stuff for Golden Tiki. So I'm very, very pleased. They actually approached me with the idea of doing a spice line because of Food with Spirit coming out this fall. And it seemed like a great project. And so I came up with 7 blends and I challenged them to create them, and they did. They knocked it out of the park. I'm super, super thrilled. I think everybody's going to love it. We're going to actually package them in a glass flask. So the theme is very alcohol infused, and each spice blend is infused with a different spirit. So it's going to be a really cool concept. I think it's really going to take off. We're going to try to get into stores like Whole Foods and a couple of the regional, Vegas shops, some of our great Epicurean shops that we have here, and gourmet food stores and so forth. So should be fun.
What would you say is the hardest part about cooking with alcohol? Is it staying sober while you're cooking? I mean, it's got to be here's an ounce for this and an ounce for me. I mean, I've cooked with beer a few times, so I know that's kind of how that goes.
The hardest thing for me is the spirits that I don't drink. So this is a big source of shame in my family because I don't drink anything brown. So unless it's a Diet Coke. I don't like bourbon, and my family loves Manhattans. That's just our family thing on the Italian side. And because I don't like Manhattans, I decided to cook with them instead. So one of my seasoning blends actually is called my Manhattan Barbecue Seasoning, which started out in Italian Cookbook for Two as one of my breakout famous recipes that I have. So I make a barbecue sauce, and the concept is you're supposed to make a pitcher of Manhattans, and you throw and you're supposed to enjoy the Manhattans, which I don't, but my family does. And then you throw one of the Manhattans into the sauce, and then you kind of let it simmer for about a half an hour, and it makes this amazing barbecue sauce. And then I, slather it on my ribs, and it's really, really good. But the hardest part about it, especially doing this cookbook, was having to experiment with things other than vodka or Malibu rum. I mean, I'm kind of a pedestrian when it comes to spirits, so I have to broaden my palate, which is another reason why I like to cook with it, is because I don't really drink it. There's so many spirits I don't drink.
That barbecue sauce sounds amazing. And again, this is another thing that you're incredible at this. You're telling me about it, and I can taste it. I can smell it in my house, and I can taste it. It's like you're in the kitchen at my house right now. I'm like, oh, this seems like this is. Ooh, I gotta try this out. Something else that you do that's really cool is you have your own cooking show, essentially, Sin City Kitchen.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic little concept. Tell me a little bit about Sin City Kitchen.
So Sin City Kitchen, in the first season we were doing, it was kind of like they refer to it as ITK, right, in the kitchen. So season 1 was very much like, in my kitchen, in my home, filming. I've got a great production team. Richard Gaccavino is a friend of mine, and he's a local producer here in Las Vegas, Gaccavino Media. He has his own channel that streams on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV called Hey Vegas, and that's where my show is available. So he approached me with the idea of doing this show, and season 2 is going to be a lot different. So we're going to be out and about in Las Vegas. So first episode we filmed was in Chinatown at a 16-seat coastal seafood bar owned by my friends Joe Mascaleone and Jimmy Lee, who is James Beard nominated chef. They also own Shanghai Taste. So we actually filmed within Sea Fresh, and that was a great opportunity. There's going to be a lot of great things going on this season. We're filming in different restaurants, different locations. Hopefully going to be filming at a very famous comedy club here in town. And actually interviewing a very famous comedian here in town coming up on a future episode. Comedy obviously is huge in Las Vegas. Featuring some of the other restaurants that are off strip that a lot of people don't know about. My friend Nina Manchef owns Forte Tapas, which is an Eastern European restaurant on Rainbow off the strip. She's also known as the Caviar Queen. Hi, Nina. So she's amazing. She's agreed to come on my show. She was on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, I think about 12 or 13 years ago. So, great pedigree, comes from UNLV. Really, really great. She and her family are Bulgarian, and they make some incredible cuisine. So can't wait to feature them. Frank Mir is an MMA fighter, and I had an opportunity recently to meet his wife and talk about Cuban cuisine. So she's going to come on the show, and we're going to do a Cuban show and find a cool location for that and just do something fun. So yeah, I'm excited. There's a bunch of things going on, and season 2 is very much going to be about on location and the pulse of the city.
I think that's very cool, because I think particularly for my audience and the people that listen to my podcast, it's a lot of tourists.
Mm-hmm.
And as a person that goes frequently, I've been lucky enough to kind of get off the strip with some of my friends that live there and have some local experiences at some of the local restaurants. And I say I hate to share the secret with the tourists, because I don't want some of these places to turn into tourist places. But at the same time, I think it is really important that people realize that there's such a big world away from the strip. And I think it's great that you're sharing that world on your show to try to get people out as well. I think that's excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. And, there are so many different parts, to Vegas. A lot of people love downtown. I personally don't go downtown very often, but there's some great things happening downtown. In fact, Picnic in the Alley is a really cool boutique Epicurean event, curated by women that I'll be participating in. And we've got, chefs coming in from all over Vegas. Everybody is based here in Vegas, doing any number of different things for food and beverage, and that's going to be a great event on May 21st. I'll be signing cookbooks during the VIP hour. Again, I'll mention Chinatown again, just a huge plug, but Chinatown Vegas, the social media gets like 1 million hits a month. It's something crazy, and it's a combination of locals and tourists. There are a lot of tourists that are venturing out to some different areas now in Chinatown, and it's not just about Asian cuisine. There's great Italian cuisine there. I'm doing a pop-up there, a 4-course Italian dinner coming up on May 31st. There are, there's Golden Tiki, which is on the outskirts of Chinatown, which is a great tiki bar. So yeah, there's just so much fun. There's a really exciting restaurant called Partage. And again, sort of same strip mall vibe, like just as if you're going to Golden Tiki, you would never know it's there. But as soon as you walk in, and you're literally paying, probably about a third as you would, at a French restaurant on the strip. And I love them all, but it's great. So it's really nice to be able to venture out and fiscally responsible as well. There's better deals off the strip, of course.
Definitely. And something else that you've landed as well, and you mentioned this to me, which is really cool, is you've connected with Status Champagne Lounge at the Shops at the Palazzo, which is going to be opening up this summer. You're going to be involved with that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So my friends Hola and Bill, they are just serial entrepreneurs. I cannot believe some of the stuff that they're involved in. They just took over Tokyo Social House in Lake Las Vegas, which is a great restaurant. They're completely transforming that. It's got a beautiful view of the lake. But yes, the Status Champagne Lounge is opening in the Palazzo Shops, Palazzo side of the Grand Canal Shops. And it's right kind of around the corner from Sushi Shamba and like some of the X-Pod and some of the really big restaurants. And they have asked me to run their menu, and probably going to be putting some great things together, like pairings, recommendations for, various their sparkling wine and other things that they're going to be having on their menu. So it's a phenomenal opportunity for me. I had my debut on the strip actually last year at Sahara. which was great. So being back on the strip and having this opportunity to actually be a permanent part of a menu is going to be a first for me. And I couldn't be more excited for Hole and Bill and Status and what they're bringing to this community. I think it's really going to be something very, very special.
And that end of the Grand Canal shops is really starting to boom in the last few years as well. I've noticed there's been a lot of restaurants. You mentioned Sushi Samba, and Flight Club is in that end of the thing,
Yes.
end of things as well. And it's good because that's again, that's turning into a busy end of the Grand Canal shops with the Atomic Saloon and the Spiegel World Showdown in that end as
Yes.
well. And it's always nice to have another option of somewhere to go if you're happen to be headed to the show or you've got something going on. So it's great to see that opening up in that end of the Grand Canal shops. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful too. And that side, the Palazzo side, is more my speed. Not just because there's high-end shops, you got Christian Louboutin, all that kind of stuff, but it's quieter. So if it's not as frenetic as the gondolas and there's a little bit of chaos on the other side, on
Yeah,
the
there is.
Venetian side. I prefer more of a chill, like, okay, let's go and have a nice drink and kind of like chill out a little bit more loungy, bougie maybe. But yeah, I like that actually. So it works for me.
It's a very nice quiet spot, as you say, to kind of escape from the singing gondoliers and all the tourists. I feel like not as many people kind of venture down to
Yeah.
that end of the Grand Canal shops unless you have a reason to go down there. So it's nice to have another reason to go there.
It's true. And see this is kind of like a little insider tip, but my husband and I usually park at the Wynn because it's free parking. And as a local, that's very important. That's not everybody has it. Like, you got Palms and you got, I think, Mirage and a couple of other casinos that still have free parking. We park at the Wynn, have a drink at the Wynn, and then we just walk over the bridge, straight into, Palazzo. And then you're on those side of the shops. So
Mhm.
it works really, really nicely because it's, the proximity to the Wynn is great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about Tiffany because, as I
Yeah.
said, again, professing my love for her. I grew up, I mean, I would have been probably 12 or 13 years old when I think We're Alone Now came out. And
Uh-huh.
so that was right in my wheelhouse. And that was right. She was, again, my celebrity crush all the way through and even to today. So you just recently did a collaboration with Tiffany at the Space, which I'm a very, very familiar with that facility. I'm good friends with Mark Chinook, who owns it and runs it. How did that all come to be? What is your relationship with this pop queen?
Well, we were introduced by our mutual friend John Harris, who's been in the music business for quite some time, and when he realized, and he had reconnected with her after about several years of not communicating, just kind of separate lives, and they had lost touch. And once they reconnected, she let him know that she was doing a lot more with food, that her music career was still sort of core to who she is, but that she started a cooking club and she was working on a cookbook, which she has since released. And he thought, well, I know someone who cooks a lot, so maybe you guys should meet and maybe you guys can do an event, because she was doing a lot of events, different parts of the country during COVID. She lives in Nashville now. And so he introduced us, and right away we just were like, two kids gabbing. I mean, we just connected through food, and we decided to do an event. And so she flew out here. We created the menu together, which was very Mediterranean inspired. And it just kind of happened. And then before we knew it, like, we were going out to dinner. I took her to Golden Tiki. She met my husband. I mean, it's like, and I met her fiance. We just struck up this friendship, and it's just been such a beautiful thing. I mean, she has just a gigantic heart. I mean, and she's a force. She comes into a room and it's like, she's not arrogant. She's just beautiful, but she has just a great laugh. And it's like everybody is drawn to her, even if they don't know that she's a pop princess. They, because she's just a casual person, in many
Mhm.
cases you'd never know. But yeah, she's just was very easy to befriend, and I'm very grateful to her. And she's so incredibly supportive of my career, and she calls me her mentor, which I think is just so sweet and so kind when it comes to food. So we're both actually learning together. She's teaching me things too. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's got to be kind of surreal when somebody like that calls you a mentor or
Yes.
comes to you for advice.
Yeah.
As a weird aside, I had an experience many years ago working in radio with Alice Cooper,
Oh my
who
gosh.
is the nicest person in the world. Again, super nice guy and everything. And he came into the radio station that I was working at, and I spent about 45 minutes interviewing him and asking him about music and his career and all this stuff. And then after the interview was done, he came around the other side of the board and wanted to sit with me because he was doing a Nights with Alice Cooper, this radio show that was syndicated all
Oh,
over the US and Canada. And
yeah.
he asked me all these questions about radio and about this and about that. And I just thought, this is the most surreal frigging moment of my life. I'm giving radio advice to Alice Cooper. Like, what the hell is going on? So it's got to be kind of that strange sort of turnabout for you as well, being I'm giving cooking advice and food advice to Tiffany. This is so weird.
Well, it's true, and we all start somewhere. We all start somewhere, and she has just so much knowledge because she's so incredibly world traveled. I mean, she's been all around the planet, and she's had inspiration from mom and pop places that she's been. She's been to some of the most luxurious places on earth, both ends of the spectrum. And she incorporates that into her food. And it is very, very cool, though, when someone, again, comes in and they don't have an ego and they're like, so how would you like, why do you make your hummus that way? Like what, and it's like, hey, I like cannellini beans in my hummus because I think it makes it creamier, and it's like, okay, I know that's not traditional, but, having an open mind. And I think when you're a creative person, and you're used to producing things and have that as your life, you're more receptive to different types of influences, no matter what form of art it is. And so yeah, it's very much what I get from her in spades, and it's just been so sweet. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And it's quite an honor because we're talking like almost 20 million albums. She's just a very highly successful person and has made a career of music, and now making her career of food. I mean, I'm very, very proud of her, and she's done so much stuff.
And you mentioned you're putting together a cookbook with her.
Yeah.
What kind of recipes and what kind of dishes are you putting into that cookbook? Is it kind of a little bit of everything? Is it big stuff, little stuff, easy stuff, hard stuff, sort of all over the place?
Yeah, I think it's no, I think it's gonna be easy stuff. So we're doing a lot of it is sort of 80s themed. So I did like one of my mashups that I'm doing is, this French bread pizza. I don't know if you ate them as a kid, but like the little frozen French bread pizzas. I used to love them as a kid. And then also in the 80s, what become very, very popular through Wolfgang Puck was the barbecue chicken pizza. So I smashed those together and I made a barbecue chicken French bread pizza. But it's not very hard. I mean, you could even use just rotisserie chicken, put your favorite barbecue sauce on it. You get, some French bread, slice it open, horizontally, cut it into slices. And it's just a really, really great recipe, super, super fun recipe, very easy. So a lot of things like that are, things that we enjoyed as kids, nachos and just different types of things that are some of them are elevated and some of them are like, real basic. Because again, we want it to be accessible for people, not something that's so, high and foodie-ish that it's difficult to execute. We want people to actually make it and not just, sit on their shelf. So
as a person that has several cookbooks sitting on their shelves, some of which I know for a fact I haven't even cracked open.
yeah.
I appreciate that a lot because I've gotten cookbooks before. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I start thumbing through it and I think, this is way too hard for this kid. I'm not figuring this stuff out anytime soon. So I appreciate that you're doing simple stuff. I think that's outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah, there is a cookbook that I have. It's one of my favorites, a gorgeous cookbook. It's a Nobu cookbook of all the different types of sushi, and it's nothing that you could ever execute in a million years. Number one, you don't have access to that type of fish. Nobody does. And the ingredients and just the labor that goes into some of these things. But I mean, it looks great on a coffee table. I mean, it's a gorgeous cookbook. It's just beautiful, but never made anything in that.
I'm glad I'm not the only one then.
Oh yeah. No. And make no mistake, I mean, this is going to be a pretty cookbook, so we're really, going to be putting a lot of time and energy into the aesthetic. Pictures are going to be good, like Food with Spirit. There's a an image for every single recipe, which is not a luxury I had. And if you look at my reviews on Amazon, for example, I still have like a 4.3 or 4.7. I can't remember, out of 5 stars. But if you look at the negative comments, it's like, where are all the pictures? Where are all the pictures? Because Italian Cookbook for Two had a bunch of pictures. Food with Spirit has a picture for every single recipe. And that's just the way that particular publisher rolled. And I didn't have a choice. Sorry, everybody. I didn't have a choice on that one. But I need pictures. And obviously, when you have someone as beautiful as Tiffany and the life that she has, being out on stage, and I mean, there's just going to be a lot of fan interaction. It's going to be a lot of colors, and she's super into art and doing a lot of pop art stuff, even in the UK she's been involved in. So it's going to be a very aesthetically pleasing book that people are really going to enjoy, almost like a lifestyle book in addition to being a cookbook. So it's kind of like it's going to be pretty unique. So we're excited about it.
That's awesome. I love that. If you're talking to her anytime soon, please tell her I say hi.
I will. And, she will see this. Trust me. She will see this. Yeah. You might even be able to convince her to come on the show. Yeah. You might be able to convince her.
Please give her my best, and please tell her I love her.
I will.
I think the restraining order is expired. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Anyway.
I'll let her fiance know.
Yeah, please do. Alicia, if people want to learn more about you, they want to get recipes, they want to get their hands on your cookbooks, they want to see where you're going to be at next, you are very active online and very active on social media.
Thank you. Yes, I am. So I've got my website, dinkcuisine.com. /events. I've got all my events posted on my website, all my recipes posted on my website. I also run a group on Facebook called the Dinkdom, DINKDOM, which has exclusive content. So I publish recipes there first. So we've got membership that's coming up on 1,000 members. So it's rapidly growing, which is amazing. So if you're looking for exclusive content, go there first. And then I usually, kind of post stuff to other channels after, but you can also follow just my regular Facebook, Alicia.Shevetone, and also on Dink Cuisine and Twitter at Dink Cuisine.
Excellent. I will share all those links in the show notes. Alicia, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and a pleasure getting to know you. And I look forward to coming down to Vegas and maybe connecting with you and having a bite to eat.
Thanks, Jeff.
And that wraps up another episode of Jeff Does Vegas. If you've got feedback on this episode of the show, or any other episode for that matter, or you've got suggestions and ideas for topics you'd like me to cover on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Jeff Does Vegas. Or drop me an email directly at jeff@jeffdoesvegas.com. In the meantime, thank you so much for checking out the show. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you'll know the moment new episodes are available. And don't forget to visit jeffdoesvegas.com for past episodes and show notes. My name is Jeff, and this has been Jeff Does Vegas, a Walker New Media production.